And we now welcome in CBS Sports NBA insider Bill Reiter. Bill, this wasn't the debut I don't think anyone envisioned for James Harden with the Clippers. But what did you make of LA's performance with Harden tonight?
Yeah, I thought their performance was poor, and I thought Harden as an individual played really well, especially for a guy that we weren't sure how much rust he was going to have. But as a team, and this happens, right? When you add superstars to the mix, I thought they looked discombobulated. They turned the ball over a bunch of times. A third of the points that the Knicks scored came off of turnovers. Paul George had a rough night. And so I thought Harden played well individually and at times looked like he was in rhythm with some of the guys as a part of that offense. They just felt like a team that had a new part they didn't know how to use. I think things will get better, but you're right, a rough start for the Clippers. But I thought Harden as an individual played pretty well and shined fairly brightly.
This is a good point that you bring up because I want to look at this Nuggets team as a whole and putting this game aside. When you look at the landscape of the Western Conference, you have the Nuggets, you have the Suns, you have the Lakers. But where do the Clippers stack up compared to maybe some of these other teams in the West?
It's a great question. All right, so for me, I don't buy into the Clippers and the idea that they're going to make a deep run. We have not seen very many NBA champions who have not had LeBron James basically try to construct championship level teams and be successful overnight. The Nuggets, the Warriors, most of these teams are homegrown, and maybe you add a big piece like a Kevin Durant who came in obviously for the Warriors. I don't think it's going to work for the Clippers, but there's certainly a difference of opinion out there. You talk to executives and scouts, some people are really skeptical of what the Clippers can do and can be because of Harden's struggles in the postseason, because of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George's inability to be healthy consistently. But when you just look on paper at this team, you look at their ceiling, there's certainly those that will make the case that if they can get right, just in terms of being healthy, once they get used to each other, because we're talking about games right now in November, come April, there are certainly people who think they can be in that mix you talked about. Maybe not that Nuggets level. I think the Nuggets are on a tier to themselves, but Kawhi Leonard knows a thing or two about getting to the postseason with a team and overcoming obstacles sometimes, and maybe the odds a little bit. There are certainly those, including in that Clippers organization, who think when they get to the playoffs, if things start to click, they can do some real damage.
This is a team that's full of all-stars, but you believe there'll be a little bit of growing pains. That's understandable. Okay, how about the other team they faced tonight, the Knicks, a playoff team from a season ago, now 3-4. What are your early impressions about what's going on at Madison Square Garden?
Full disclosure, the folks in the studio there and all the Knicks fans on my timeline, I have been down on the Knicks the last 2 years. I spend hours a day just trying to make nice with all those Knicks fans. Again, I think there's a clear tier, in this case in the Eastern Conference. I think whatever order you want to put them in, it's Boston, it's Milwaukee in Tier 1, and then there are teams that are going to compete to be in Tier 2. I don't buy into the idea that the New York Knicks are even in that tier. I think they are, we saw last year, a playoff team that's a fringe second-round team. Maybe they get there and they get outclassed at that point. But Jalen Brunson's obviously a superstar. You saw a really good performance today. Obviously, Thibodeau teams play a really high level of defense. So while I'm skeptical of what they're going to be, and a lot of people around the NBA are, they certainly have some of the pieces and some of the parts to be better than maybe I'm giving them credit for.
Bill, I have a whole group of people that are currently upstairs that are pretty darn disappointed in the words that are coming out of your mouth. But we appreciate the insight. Thank you so much. And how about we take a look at James Harden and his debuts with a new team. This is the least amount of points he's ever scored in a debut with a new squad. 17 points, 6 assists with his debut with the Clippers going against the Knicks. Remember his debut with the Rockets, 37 points, 12 assists, having that nice outing. Not the strongest of outings, but maybe a sign of things to get better for this all-star Clipper squad. And for more, we welcome in CBS Sports NBA writer James Herbert, who joins us from Madison Square Garden. Obviously, there's a lot of hype surrounding this Clippers team with their new key cog added to this lineup. Not quite the result they wanted in James Harden's debut. But what just did you learn about James Harden and this Clippers team following this loss to the Knicks?
Yeah, I think you learned sort of how Ty Lue is looking at this at the outset. You saw Harden come in, play with the other three kind of high usage players and then sub out pretty quickly and come back in and lead the second unit. You saw at times kind of the whole idea behind the Clippers wanting to add James Harden to the team when he is creating offense for Paul George, for Kawhi Leonard, for Russell Westbrook. Then he's kind of making things easier on them, like taking away the load that they have to carry. He did set up Kawhi Leonard for a corner three in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately for the Clippers, though, not a lot else went right in that fourth quarter. Their defense really let them down. I believe the Knicks scored in the first 10 possessions of the fourth quarter. The Clippers were dominated on the glass. And, throughout the night, some of the sort of things you might expect in terms of miscommunications, just sort of bad reads, that kind of deal for a group that hasn't played together. We did see that. I mean, this is 22 turnovers for the Clippers, by far a season high for them. I think it was the sixth highest turnover game in the entire NBA early on this season. So they're still obviously working out the kinks, but you do understand the idea. They were getting some looks through James Harden's passes that they just weren't generating earlier this year.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, we have to think about this. It's been roughly, 5 days for Harden to get acclimated with his new team. But with that being said, a little bit of a two-parter for you. How much of a process do you think it'll be to get Harden integrated into this offense? And then also, what's your outlook for this Clippers team going forward?
Yeah, I think it will take some time. They're going to have to change the rotations. Ty Lue already said after this game that he's going to look at making some tweaks to the rotation. There might be times where Ty Lue has to come in and take more of a aggressive play calling role than he would have before, just to make sure some of his guys stay involved. And he said there was an emphasis going into the second half to get Kawhi Leonard more involved in the offense. And you saw that. The first play of the second half was for Kawhi Leonard, and he ended up scoring 7 points in the first 4.5 minutes or so in the second half, whereas in the first half he wasn't super involved. I mean, he didn't run his first pick and roll until halfway through the first quarter. If you go back and look at Clippers games from earlier this year, and especially in prior years before they added Russell Westbrook to the mix, that would just never ever happen. He was initiating so much for them. So it's going to be an adjustment period, I think, for everyone, and that includes the coaching staff, who are going to have to decide what are they going to do in terms of even the starting lineup. When Terrence Mann comes back from injury, will he join the starting lineup? He was penciled in as a starter coming into the year. There's obviously some rationale for bringing Russell Westbrook off the bench and kind of staggering him and Harden as much as possible. That's probably what I would do, but I'm not in charge. I think regardless, the sort of general outlook for this Clippers team is they have a lot of different ways to play. And Ty Lue may be the most experimental coach in terms of lineup shifting and playing big, playing small, all those different things. He is going to have a lot of different ways to kind of, try things out and experiment with different lineups, mix and match, and we'll see how that evolves. In game one, it wasn't exactly what they hoped for, but you saw some flashes.
You got to see a little bit of flashes, and you said Tyronn Lue's going to do a little bit of experimenting. He'll have an opportunity to experiment a little more with their next game Wednesday against the Nets, then heading to Dallas to face the Mavericks before heading back home. Thank you so much. We appreciate the insight.